For today's lecture, we will be discussing qualitative characteristics of images formed by mirrors. So this covers week 6 and 7 of your modules. For the most essential learning competency, so this is what we are going to achieve for the whole discussion. We would like to predict the qualitative characteristics such as the orientation, type, and magnification of images formed by plane and curved mirrors and lenses. So for this week, we'll be focusing more on the mirrors and then lenses for the following weeks. More specifically, these are the following objectives of this lesson. Number 1, we have to discuss the properties of light, such as reflection and refraction. And we would like to demonstrate how images are formed in flat and curved mirrors, and then of course lenses. And lastly, we would like to describe qualitatively the images formed in flat and curved mirrors and lenses. So before we proceed to the main topic, let us recall first the idea of the visible light. So we have discussed the electromagnetic waves or the electromagnetic spectrum as a whole. For the following weeks, we'll be discussing more of the visible light, which is a small portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. So we have specified that visible light is the electromagnetic wave which allows us to see objects, and more specifically its color. So we learned from our discussion that this visible light can actually interact with matter in different ways. Light can be reflected by matter. Light can also be transmitted. That's why we can look at clear mirrors or clear glasses. We can see things from behind these glasses. That is because of transmission. We also have light being absorbed by the matter. That's why leaves or plants are able to photosynthesize. That is because of the visible light that is being absorbed by these organisms. And lastly, your light can be scattered by matter. Again, we'll be just focusing on one portion of your electromagnetic spectrum, which is the visible light. And this branch of science, which focuses on visible light, its interaction with matter, its properties and applications, is what we call as optics. Again, optics is a branch of physics which focuses on the study of visible light. So let us consider objects such as shiny metals like spoon. You also have your mirrors. We also have your clear waters. So we are familiar that when we look at these objects or when we look at these scenarios, we could actually see ourselves from these objects. And these are what we call reflection of ourselves. The question here is, what is with these objects? What is with these shiny metals, these mirrors, these clear waters that are able to allow us to see ourselves or objects as reflections? Okay, so pag-aaralan natin kung ano yung meron dito sa mga bagay na ito, bakit nakakapag-reflect sila ng image ng isang object. We define reflecting objects as objects which are able to make light bounce off. So the keywords here are light bounce off, thus producing images. Examples of reflecting objects are mirrors, shiny objects, smooth metallic substances, and others. The most common type of reflecting objects are the mirrors. So we'll be focusing first on the mirrors to discuss more of reflection. So basically, there are 3 types of mirrors. You have the ones that we use at home when we look at your face. So you have your flat mirrors or plain mirrors for other references. Concave mirrors, or those mirrors which are actually bending or curved inwards, and the convex mirrors which are bulged outwards. So these mirrors are common for some places and for specific applications. Let us now define reflection. So sabi natin kanina, reflecting objects are able to bounce off light. So the bouncing off of light is specifically termed as reflection. So the light rays are being bounced off when it hits a surface like a plane or a flat mirror. So you have to take note of a general idea of how we see things or objects. By this, we could easily understand what or how reflection occurs. So for our vision or kung paano tayo nakakakita, dapat natin maunawaan ano yung ganitong klase ng concept. So say for example, we have a light source, in this case, a light bulb, pero you could also have yung sun as the main source of this light, diba? So generally, ang term natin is the light or the white light. And then this light, of course, is being scattered everywhere. So tatama siya sa kahit anong object. And then the light that is being hit on the object will be reflected towards, say for example, our eyes. Kaya natin nakikita yung object. Kasi nai-illuminate siya nung light. Okay, or nung source of light. So that is the idea. Bakit mo nakikita yung mga bagay? That is because of the reflection of the light. However, yung mga reflecting objects na diniscuss natin kanina, they are special kinds of reflecting objects. Kasi as they reflect light, they are able to portray, okay, reflection of certain images. Hindi kagaya halimbawa sa pinto. Yung pinto natin, may kakayahan siyang mag-reflect ng light. That's why we can see the door. However, hindi kagaya ng mirror, kapag ni-reflect niya yung light, makakakita ka ng reflection ng object doon sa mirror. So, pag tumingin ka sa mirror, makikita mo yung itsura ng mukha mo, ganyan, yung, bawa, yung objects na nasa background mo, makikita mo siya sa mirror kasi they are special kinds of reflecting objects. Our ability to see objects in its color depends on the reflection of light in an object. So it is reflection which allows us to see specifically the colors of certain objects. That's why you can see yung, say for example, the leaves of the plant as green. That is because of certain pigment or compound in that leaves, which reflects light. And then sa case na yun, sa dahon, yun yung tinatawag natin na chlorophyll, ang nire-reflect niya yung kulay green na portion ng visible light. Diba? Sa illustration natin ng electromagnetic spectrum, si visible light, nahahati pa siya into different colors. Those are your red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. And those differ in wavelength. So, ang mangyayari, pagka tumama yung ilaw doon sa dahon mo, ang ginagawa ng dahon or ng leaves mo, yung chlorophyll, specifically in the leaves, it absorbs the red and then the blue light or the blue portion of your visible light. Ang hindi niya kayang i-absorb is yung green, yung medyo range ng green, yellow, kasama pa yan. Ngayon, kapag hindi nga niya ma-absorb yun, ang gagawin niya, i-reflect niya yun. Tapos ayun yung tumatama din sa mata natin. That's why we can see your leaves as color green. In understanding reflection, you have to take a note of this basic information. So say for example, we have here itong blue line, that is your mirror, representing your mirror. For some references for your books, for your modules, ang illustration niya is pahiga, pero ginawa ko siya na patayo kasi 'di ba yung ang natural sa atin, yung mirror pag tumitingin ka, nakatayo na ganan. So para madali nating maintindihan. So the light that is coming from the source, okay? So sabihin na natin kunwari na nanggaling sa isang object or sa light bulb or sa sun. So the ray of light that is coming from the object or the source is what we call the incident light. Yellow line that is approaching the mirror, okay, symbolized as P. And then, it is being reflected by the mirror. And then this ray that is being reflected by the mirror is what we call the reflected light, symbolized by Q. Given reflection, we can only consider this as reflection if we have here a normal line drawn at the middle of the incident light and then the reflected light. And it is considered as reflection if we make sure that the angle made by the incident light at saka yung normal line be equal to the angle made by the reflected light and the normal line. So for reflection, dapat laging equal yung reflected light doon sa incident light. So kahit saan pa siya manggaling. So say for example, if we have light that is coming from this direction, kunwari tuwid yung drawing ko. Yan. It hits the mirror and then it should be reflected such that the angle would be the same. So dapat yung angle na to na mapo-form ng incident light at saka ng reflected light should always be equal. Whatever direction it has to go, dapat ay equal pa rin siya. Okay, so that is reflection. So this symbol is read as theta, a Greek letter theta, meaning angle. So again, for reflection, the incident angle should always be equal to the reflected angle. So now let us move on to the image formation for plane mirrors. Kasi ito yung pinaka-application. This would give us the very significance of optics or yung image formation natin. So how come we see things as is when we look at plane mirror? So ano ba yung itsura natin when we look at a plane mirror? So sige, before we proceed to the very discussion of the technicalities, let us imagine looking at your face in the mirror. Okay, so how do you see yourself? So of course, you have to describe the image. So yung nakikita natin doon sa mirror natin would be the image. Okay? So whenever we have to discuss or describe the images form, we can use the following mnemonics. Gagamitin natin po itong mnemonics na to. So we have here lost. So the images should be described in terms of number 1, the location. So for plane mirrors, madali lang. You can use lang the terms behind or in front of the mirror. Pero it will differ now for curved mirrors and lenses. We'd also like to describe the image's form by its orientation. So we would like to know, is the image form upright, nakatayo ba siya, or inverted, or nakatiwari? For the size, you can identify the image as compared to the object being the same, parehas lang ba sila ng size? Reduced ba si image, or is it smaller? Or is it enlarged or bigger? And lastly, we would like to determine the type of the image. So that is the image virtual or real? Ngayon, hindi pa natin masyado maintindihan yung virtual at real, pero as we go along with the technicalities or the diagramming, makikita natin kung ano yung ibig sabihin ng virtual at real. Let us now move on to the image formation. So how does image formation takes place? So I have here an illustration. So let me illustrate how images are formed in plane mirrors. So let us consider this illustration. What we are doing here is a method called ray diagramming. So in ray diagramming, we would like to describe how our images form in certain mirrors or lenses. So what we have here, I'll draw here a thicker line, a thicker blue line representing the mirror. At home, you'll be needing your rulers, your graphing papers para mas makapag-illustrate pa kayo. Pero for some, I'll be allowing them to use paint. Okay, kasi for paint, meron na siyang mga graduation or calibration. So madali tayong makapag-draw. But then, yung catch is nakadepende sa or nipis ng linya na gagamitin. So what we do in ray diagramming, so this line represents the mirror, and then itong black line that is placed horizontally is called the line of propagation. So this determines the direction of the motion of the light. So pag ganun yung light, ibig sabihin yung source natin is somewhere here. Okay? And then this arrow, upright arrow here, black arrow, represents any object. So, some uses candles, some uses detailed objects talaga. Say, for example, tao or hayop or halaman. However, it will require us a more complicated discussion of how images can be interpreted. So, ang ginagamit na lang natin is arrow. Kahit na yung simpleng arrow lang na stick would be okay. Okay? And then we'll be placing, of course, the object in front of the mirror. Kunwari, merong tao dito na nananalamin. So, paano natin malalaman yung itsura, yung location, yung size, okay, nung image na mapo-form natin. Take that we are using here a plane mirror. So what we would like to do is, we'll be illustrating rays coming from this object. Sabi nga natin, di ba, yung object mo, tatamaan siya ng source of light, tapos, ire-reflect niya yung light. In that case, we could easily say that this object becomes another source of light. So, panggagalingan na siya ngayon ng light. So, nandun na tayo sa portion na yun, na panggagalingan ng light yung ating object. So, what we would like to do is, from the tip of the arrow, okay, mag-drawing tayo ng line. See, for example, I would like to draw a line that is approaching the very center, yung pinaka-intersection ng mirror at saka line of propagation. So, tumama siya dito sa salamin. Okay? Sabi natin sa law of reflection or sa reflection, when we have your mirror, it will be reflecting the light at a certain angle that is equal. Okay? Yung incident angle mo dapat ay equal sa reflected angle. So sa case na to, you'll be using protractor. Pero kasi don't worry kasi for plane mirrors, isa lang naman yung klase ng image na na-form dyan. So you'll just do the image formation for plane mirrors once. Yung curved mirrors lang yung marami. Gagawin nyo lahat ng possible na image formation. Okay, so sa case na to, again, may light tayo that is approaching the middle of the mirror, the intersection of the mirror and the line of propagation. So this one would be reflected at a certain angle that is equal. Okay, sabi natin kanina, equal dapat daw ng ating incident angle sa reflected angle. So in that case, tuloy-tuloy to, may ruler kayo na gagamitin, dapat siya ay aabot dito. And tuloy-tuloy yan, may arrowhead yan dyan. Okay, so this one is one possibility. That is a light coming from the tip of the arrow. From the tip of the arrow, it would have light that is hitting parallel. Okay, parallel to the line of propagation towards the mirror. So kapag parallel siya, ito yung kailangan nyo matandaan. Di ba pag nananalamin kayo, halimbawa straight, naka-straight kayo na ganyan sa harapan ng salamin, ano yung level ng mata mo? Dapat ayun din yung level nung image ng mata mo dun sa salamin. So, hindi naman siya tataas or hindi naman siya bababa. As long as dapat pantay talaga. So, in that case, if you have your light ray that is approaching parallel, okay, with the line of propagation towards the mirror, ang gagawin ng mirror mo, ibabalik lang niya sa same direction. Look at the screen. Again, from the tip, pupunta sa mirror, parallel, ibabalik lang niya yan. So, ang illustration mo, as is lang siya. Parang nagdoble lang from here, pupunta sa mirror, babalik lang. So, isang linya lang siya. Parang kumbaga, walang reflection na nangyayari. Kasi same lang yung direction. Same lang yung point na panggagalingan at pupuntahan. Okay po? Okay, so this is how we do the image formation. Pwede ka pa rin mag-add ng lines para as long as you follow okay, the rules and then the principles of reflection, okay lang din naman yun. Kagaya nung sinabi ko kanina, kunwari from this tip ha, yung pinaka ilalim niya, let us have yung light that is approaching this point again, same point. Okay? So, dito po siya manggagaling. Sabi natin kanina, it has to be reflected at a certain angle that is equal to the incident light. Okay, so dito, galing dito, sana siya, yung direction niya, hindi naman siya pwedeng pababa. So, we can have yung reflection as pataas. So, in that case, dapat mare-reflect siya pataas dito. Kaya mas maganda na meron kayong ruler kasi mas makikita nyo agad yung dire-diretso kasi yun. Ito kasi tinatansya ko lang. Yan. Kunwari ganyan. So, mare-reflect siya pataas. Tama ba ako ng angles? Okay, so far, parang okay naman. Kasi, pagkapal nung pen mo, kaya naman pag isod ng konti ng linya, mag-iiba na yung kanyang image, pwedeng yung orientation, yung size, and all. So, dapat napaka-accurate mo dito. Okay? So, ganito yung mangyayari. So, assuming that we already have enough lines, that would give us the image. The next question is that, let us identify a portion or a point in which these three lines, yung red, yung green, at saka yung violet, ay nag-i-intersect. The question is, meron bang? Meron ba silang intersection? Makikita ba natin na nagdugtong or nagtagpo yung tatlong linya na yan? So, sa case natin dito, hindi po. Okay? So, yung gagawin natin, since hindi siya nagtagpo at any point, we would like to extend those reflected light. Again, ang ine-extend lang natin ay yung reflected light. Hindi natin pwedeng i-extend yung incident light. Okay? So, in that case, let us start with the red one. Gawin kong pink yung extension. So, ito si incident light. Ang reflected light, itong directed downwards. So, ang extension niya should be this one. Diretso ko lang Pantay na ba? Yan. Wala ganyan. Parang hindi pantay yung extension ko. So, ito lang yung pangit kapag paint. Hindi mo matatansya yung kasi wala kang ruler. Yan. Extend natin yung reflected light. Ganun din sa green. So, since yung green ay parehas yung incident at saka yung reflected, so, ganun din. Straight line lang din siya. Yan. And then, for the purple one, ito yung reflected, yung pataas. So, ayun yung extend natin. So, gamitin ko itong light na violet para pala tandaan na galing siya doon. Okay, so kung makikita natin dito, nagkaroon tayo ng mga intersection. In that case, more importantly, ay magkaroon tayo intersection from, in referring to the tip of the object. So, ito yung tip natin. Ang ginamit natin is green at saka red. So, dito sa kabila, ang magiging, ang pagtutukuyan natin ng intersection is the pink and the green one. So, in that case, kung saan nandoon yung intersection ng ating light rays, nandoon po yung tip ng ating image, yung tuktok ng image. Di ba ito yung tuktok ng object? So, ito ngayon yung magiging tuktok ng image mo. So, let us draw. Teka lang, gamitan ko ng ibang kulay. Say, I would like to use blue naman. So, nandito yung tuktok niya. Adjust ko pa. Okay? So, this would give us now the image of the object. So, yung reflection ay nandito na siya. Kulayan ko ng blue. Since ayun yung intersection, ayun yung magiging tip ng ating image. So, as you can see, ito yung object natin, ito yung reflection, ito yung nakikita natin sa salamin. Okay? Now, let us use the mnemonics laws to identify or to describe the image's form. Okay, so starting of course with L, meaning location. So how can we describe the location of the image? So the question is it in front of the mirror or behind the mirror? So ito si mirror mo, nandito ka, so nasa kabilang location or nasa kabilang part yung iyong image. Therefore, the image is behind the mirror. Ganun lang, behind the mirror or in front of the mirror. That is for flat or plain mirrors. The next one is O, orientation. So the question is your image upright or inverted? Nakatayo ba siya or nakatiwari? Take note, ang dinidescribe natin itong kulay blue ha, yung image mismo. Okay? So in that case, nasa taas pa rin yung kanyang tuktok, therefore it is upright. And then, for the S or the size, you have to identify whether the size of the image is the same, reduced, or enlarged as compared to the object. So, kung makikita natin, same yung leveling niya. Hindi naman siya lumaki, hindi naman siya lumiit. So, therefore, same size po yung ating image. And lastly, for the type, okay, ito na yung kaninang mahirap i-define, di ba? So, sabi natin, is it real or virtual? Pag sinabi po nating real, yung ating image ay na-form from the reflected light. Di ba ito yung mga reflected light? Itong purple, yung red, tapos yung green dito. Pag yung image na-form, gamit sila, that is real. Pero, kung yung image mo is formed by the extension of the reflected light, na-form yung image mo galing doon sa in-extend natin na reflected light, ang tawag po dun ay virtual. In the case of the illustration for the plane mirrors, we actually extended the lines. And then from these lines extended, doon natin nakuha yung intersection or yung ating image. Therefore, the image form for plane mirror is virtual. Okay, so this is how we do the image formation for plane mirrors lang. For the following portions or parts of the discussion, we'll be discussing on the curved mirrors and the lenses. So, iba yung principle nila as compared to plane mirrors. So, how do we apply this now to yung actual use of the plane mirror? Diba? When you look at the mirror, So you appear to be, your image appears to be behind the mirror, parang nasa likod ng salamin. Okay, yung inyong image. Yung reflection ninyo. And then, pag tumitingin ka naman sa salamin, hindi ka naman nakatiwarik, so that is, the image is upright. And then, as how you look, okay, in reality, that is how you look in the reflection or in the mirror. So, kung gaano ka katangkad, kung gaano kalaki yung mukha mo, ganyan, gaano katangos yung ilong mo, that should be the same. Okay, so that is manifested here, same size, and then it is virtual. So, yung nakikita mo natin na image, parang yun yan, parang nasa kabila siya ng salamin. Okay, so please take note of this characteristics. So these are what we call qualitative characteristic. When we say qualitative, we are referring to the physical characteristics alone. We do not have to define it using numbers or any values. So ito yung mga qualitative characteristic na nung ating image. Okay? In continuation, okay? So there are two types of reflection. Meron tayong tinatawag na specular or the regular reflection, and then the diffuse or the irregular reflection. So how do they differ would be depending on the surface in which your light hits. For specular, this is the reflection of light on smooth surfaces. So yung mga makikinis na surface, flat surface, shiny surfaces, such as mirrors or a calm body of water. For the diffuse or the irregular reflection, this is a reflection on rough surfaces such as clothing sa damit natin. Ma'am, di naman ganun ka-rough siya. Pero at least hindi siya flat, hindi siya plain, kumbaga. Paper, a wavy water, and specifically as an asphalt road, yung kalsada natin. Okay, magaspang na kalsada. So how do images are formed in this kind of reflection? So makikita natin, for specular reflection, you can observe that the reflection of light is very uniform. Okay, kung makikita natin, if we have this sort or number of light rays that is hitting the surface, they are being reflected at a certain angle. Sabi nga, equal angle. So, napaka-uniform niya, pare-pares yung direction. However, if you have diffuse reflection on rough surfaces, again, so given a single source of light, okay, the reflected light seems to scatter. Kasi gawa ng mga rough surface na yun, dapat kasi ma-follow niya yung equal angle. So, ang mangyayari, kung saan-saan na naroon napunta yung ating reflected light. And it has a very good application, di ba, for your, in our daily living. So, an example of specular reflection would be nga, reflection on a calm body of water. So, makita natin yung building na to and then the trees. It is reflected in detail doon sa clear water. Kung ano yung itsura niya dun sa tunay, eh, hindi yung itsura niya dito. No disruptions, no damages, or what. In comparison to diffuse reflection, since gumagalaw yung tubig natin, say for example, humangin or may nagbato dun sa clear water natin. So makikita hindi na detalyado, kumbaga ay malabo na siya, or kumbaga wavy na rin yung image natin. But then, there is still reflection. Okay? And one last thing that we have to consider, or that we can consider as application of this reflection, lalo na yung specular at diffuse reflection. Kung bakit yung mga roads natin are made rough. Bukod sa syempre, to lessen friction, para hindi madulas yung mga sasakyan natin, it has also something to do with, with the interaction of light with these kinds of surfaces. Imagine, kunwari, dalawang sasakyan, magta-travel sila, okay, aandar sila magkasalubong. Kunwari smooth yung inyong surface. Kunwari yung daan, yung kalsada. Kunwari ito si sasakyan, square na para madaling i-drawing. Tapos di ba meron siyang source of light dito sa unahan, may ilaw siya doon sa unahan niya. Ngayon, kapag meron siyang kasalubong dito na isa pa, look at the screen. Kunwari may ilaw na tumama doon sa kalsada, i-reflect niya yun at a certain angle. In that case, diretso doon sa kasalubong niya na sasakyan. So, yung mangyayari, syempre, masusulo, masisilaw yung driver, magkakaroon ng aksidente. Pero, kung ang surface natin is rough yan, ganyan. So, meron kang light source, tapos tama at a certain point, tapos mag-diffuse siya at a certain direction, depending on the angle. Laging equal yung angle. Pero since rough yung surface, magpupunta siya sa iba't ibang direction, which is very important. Kaya kapag halimbawa, kahit isa lang yung source ng light mo, kunwari sa kalsada, walang mga poste, pero meron kang may ilaw yung sasakyan mo, yung buong vicinity ng nako-cover ng light, makikita mo siya kasi nagsascatter yung light everywhere. Hindi siya pointed towards a single direction dahil smooth yung iyong surface. Okay? Kaya meron din mga gumagamit, 'di ba, yung kanilang ilaw, yung that na-adjust siya such that it can cover a wider range, okay, of vicinity for the light or the place to be illuminated. Hindi pwede na smooth yung surface mo kasi magpara lang kayong nagle-laser ng ilaw sa mga kasalubong ninyo. Okay? So it is very, very important na rough yung ating surface. Okay? And another note, for image formation in plane mirrors, you have to take note that the images forms are side reversed. Side reverse. So kung nakatingin ka sa salamin, yung kung ano yung nakikita mo sa kanan, ayun talaga yung nasa kaliwa. Yung nasa kaliwa ay yung nasa kanan. Okay? So ang baliktad lang, upright siya pero side reverse. Magkabaliktad yung location ng kanan at nung kaliwa. And one good application of that is yung ambulance. Can you do you notice yung mga ambulance natin? Baliktad yung spelling nung, di ba spelling? Pero yung orientation ng word na ambulance, ambulansya. Bakit po? Kasi kunwari ako si driver, makita ko yun sa mirror ko sa unahan, merong ambulansya sa likod ko. Since sabi nga natin, ang image na napo-form sa plane mirror ay side reverse. Pag tiningnan ko siya sa salamin, yung word na ambulance, baliktad na siya. Kung sa sasakyan, nauuna yung letter E, pag tiningnan ko sa salamin ko, kunwari nasa likod ko yung ambulansya, makikita ko na ang nasa left ay yung letter A. So it would be easy for me to determine, to identify that there is ambulance behind me. So, ang gawin ko bilang driver, tatabi ako, mapapadaan ko na si ambulansya. Bukod sa tunog, sa tunog niya, mababasa mo na madali na meron dong ambulansya. And there are many more applications of this. We'll be dealing with the applications later on after we discuss every image formation for all types of mirrors and lenses. So, I think that ends our discussion on plane mirrors and reflection. Okay? So later we'll be discussing on image formation on curved mirrors. So sa convex at saka sa concave. And then we'll try to discuss bakit ito yung mga klase ng mirrors na ginagamit natin for certain applications, for certain locations. Kagaya halimbawa sa 7-Eleven, bakit kaya ganun yung mirrors, yung bilog na mirror doon, bakit ganun yung ginagamit nila? Sa sasakyan, bakit ganun? Okay? So we will discuss this later. Okay, so for questions, kindly message on the chat box or on our group chat, and then I'll be answering you in detail afterwards. Thank you.